Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon. This is video number 2 for English 101, and this is Introduction to Social Science, Introduction to Unit 3. I'm taking my morning hike and doing some extreme social distancing, a mile or so deep in the woods, and I'm going to pause for a minute and tell you a little bit about our upcoming work. Today I want to talk about 3 specific topics. One of them is a Unit 3 overview. The second is an introduction to social science. And then the third is to touch briefly on your reading for Thursday, which is the Gordon Allport chapter, the formation of in-groups. So first, the overview. The Unit 3 is our social science unit. And this unit is going to operate in much the same way that the other 2 did. We're going to begin with some broader ideas about the discipline. Then we're going to look at a couple of examples of research and writing in that discipline. And then you will do your own research and writing in the discipline. If you look at our daily schedule, you'll see that for the first couple of days of our unit, you'll be doing reading. In one case, you'll be reading some notes rather than an entire article, just in the interest of time. Then you will really, within just the first few days, you will embark on this research project, which has 3 phases. One is to select a topic. The second is to do some research and then write about that research, write about your sources, analyze and summarize them. And then all of this culminates in our quote-unquote research paper, which is paper number 4. It's a kind of a social science writing known as an autoethnography. It combines research plus personal experience, and I think that it is a paper that you will actually enjoy, believe it or not. No promises, but I will bet. Okay, so that's our unit, and if you want to get a better sense of it, obviously you can take a look at the daily schedule. You can also take a look at the research project overview and the specific assignment information for papers 3 and 4, though you don't need to do that for maybe another day or so. Part 2 for today is an introduction to social science. Hopefully you have already watched the little video, an animated introduction to social science, which is much more entertaining than what I can do for you. But it does give you a good sense of the main disciplines in the social sciences. It hits some of them, not all of them. Things like political science, economics, sociology, psychology, education can fall under that. Basically, these are all disciplines that help to understand or seek to understand either how individual humans behave or how groups of humans behave. So you have things like psychology, right, which looks at our emotions, our decision making, things like that. Economics also looks at that, how we place value on things, how we make decisions based on value. When you get into some of the broader ideas like sociology, for example, you tend to look at how groups of people function. But it's the same kind of basic principles that apply. We can draw a little bit of a parallel between science and social science. If you'll recall, we defined science as the attempt to understand natural systems. With social science, we could see it as the attempt to understand humans and human-made systems, right? So if you think about the physical systems of the body, right, that's the sciences. But how we interact with each other, how we talk, what we say, what we talk about, how we interact with others, that's all in the social sciences, right? The physical function of how we make sounds and speak, that's science. Our accent, how language develops, what we say, that's social science. Anyway, Within the social sciences is a really broad discipline. Are some disciplines within it, think like psychology, especially experimental psychology, communications, linguistics, that use scientific methods, and they rely on quantitative data just like the scientists do. There are also branches of social science that rely on qualitative methodologies and qualitative data, just like humanities scholars do. In fact, if you get out to the kind of the far edge of social science, close to humanities, you'll see that the kinds of writing that you'll do are very similar to humanities. And in fact, the autoethnography paper that you guys are going to write is right on the border of social science and humanities writing. Anyway, uh, social science is a really difficult discipline because it's so hard to understand what make people tick. If the scientist wants to understand how the frog works, he or she can capture some frogs and cut them open and look inside, right? It's kind of grisly, but right, they can look inside to understand how that natural system works. But when you're trying to deal with people's attitudes and emotions and interactions, it's really tricky. In some cases, if the social scientist is an outsider, he or she could influence the data. I mean, imagine somebody my age showing up at a college party with you and your friends to observe your behaviors, right? I'm immediately pegged as an outsider. People are going to change their behavior because I'm there, and I mean, they may even think that it's kind of creepy for some old dude to be observing the party. But in contrast, you could show up at a college party, right? You're the right age, you dress the right way, and you could hang back and observe and take notes on people's interactions, and nobody would think twice about it. Another thing is that it's hard to know what's going on inside people's brains. For example, you can see somebody smiling, right? Anybody could see it, notice it as a smile, but how do you know why they're smiling? Are they amused by something? Are they nervous? Are they uncomfortable? Are they embarrassed? Has somebody told them to smile, so it's a forced smile? Do they have some kind of mental imbalance that causes them to smile at inappropriate times? Are they under the influence of a medication, or maybe they've been smoking the chiba and that's causing them to smile? You just don't know. And I could go on about it, but in the interest of time, I'm not going to. But social science research is really hard, and you will frequently see social scientists combining quantitative and qualitative methods, quantitative data and qualitative data. For example, if we were trying to understand homelessness in Raleigh, we might, count the number of homeless people, the number of beds available for those homeless people. We could look at the amounts of money that are spent to take care of those folks, right? Those are all quantitative measurements. Or maybe we could interview and spend some time with, like, say, a homeless family and talk with them about, why they're homeless or what their day-to-day struggles are like. We could talk with that mother or father about how they're, trying to take care of their children in a chaotic situation. And so then the question is, well, which one of those gives us a better feel for understanding of homelessness in Raleigh? Is it the quantitative data or is it the qualitative? And of course, that both of those have their strengths and weaknesses. The last topic I want to address today is the reading that you're doing for tomorrow from Gordon Allport. Gordon Allport is a big name in the social sciences, and as I mentioned before, he is the founder or the father of the field of social psychology. And the chapter that you have to read, or you just have to read part of the chapter, is from a really important book that was published in the 1950s. It is a little bit odd when you're reading Allport. Some of the things he says about race and gender, or maybe it's the way that he talks about it, seems really strange here in 2020. But I will say that when he was writing this in the mid-1950s, he would have been pretty progressive about things. It strikes us as odd now, and maybe even like sexist or racist. But I hope that you'll cut him some slack for being at least ahead of his time when he was writing this in the 1950s. In this book, or in this chapter, Allport deals with a pretty important question in terms of human behavior, which is how do we interact with each other? How do we form groups, and how do we get into the group? In order to do this, he's going to explain and define and work with some pretty important concepts. There's in-group and out-group. There's also another one called reference group. He also has two terms that deal with how people get into groups, achieved status and ascribed status. So be sure to pay attention to those things while you're reading the chapter. And please also pay attention to the example of when the guy lists all of the different groups that he belongs to. This is really interesting as well. I'm going to ask you to do something similar in your pre-work for this research project. You're going to make a list, or I hope you'll make a list of all of the different groups that you belong to, and then you'll select one of those groups to be the focus of your research and your research project, and ultimately your autoethnography. Anyway, I am probably pushing up against the time limit, so I am going to knock off here, and there'll be another video in the next 24 hours or so talking a little bit more about autoethnographies. Good luck, you guys.